$500, it pays for it entirely. If the repair costs more than $500, you get an exemption and you get to keep driving. In terms of rural owners of vehicles, Smog Check in California comes in 3 different flavors. In the more rural parts of the state, the only smog check your vehicle is subject to is the so-called change of ownership requirement. That's when you sell your vehicle. That's the only time that it gets smogged. So if you're hanging on to your vehicle year after year after year in the rural parts of the state, it never sees the biennial smog check inspection. In terms of collector vehicles, in the 2004 Lieber bill, we added language. We, in fact, reached an agreement with some of the folks who are here before you today to add language specifically to benefit the collector vehicles. And so that language is in statute today. Collector vehicles receive certain exemptions from parts of the smog check program. From a public health perspective, we think this is not good policy, and we're opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Addison. It's always delightful to see you, sometimes more than others, depending on the issue.
Mr. Chairman and members, Brendan Tuig on behalf of the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. I would associate, CAPCO is the 35 executive officers from the 35 local air districts, and we would associate our comments with those of Mr. Addison. And then just to follow up too, we really are very concerned with the negative public health impact of the bill. Air pollution is associated with increased risks for asthma, with children being especially vulnerable, heart disease, stroke, and also cancer. And so, for those reasons, we're very concerned about it, and we ask the committee to oppose the measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine Phillips with Sierra Club, California. Just ditto to everything that's been said so far. We oppose this bill and urge a no vote. Thank you.
Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the Union of Concerned Scientists, we are also opposed and would like to associate ourselves with the comments already made today. I'd also like to apologize to the author and to the committee for not getting in my letter on time, but I will make sure it gets in your hands.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from the committee? Senator Gaines?
I'm wondering, do you have any statistics on how many cars were taken off the road in the state of California as a result of the President's Junker program, and then a calculation of how much emissions was saved as a result of that program?
Mr. Addison.
I don't. I do generally know, and there's a host of published data from the Bureau of Automotive Repair and from the Air Resources Board, that the scrappage programs, particularly the state scrappage program, which is the one that California has focused on the most, that's a particularly cost-effective emission reduction strategy. But I'm afraid that I don't have details on the tons from that program. I think that's a question that BAR or ARB might be able to answer.
Okay, I don't know if we have any more information on that, or anybody on the committee does, but I would submit that you probably saved as much as what we're talking about in this piece of legislation that's being presented. I've got very real concerns about collectors. I'm in the insurance business. We sell collector auto policies. The cars have, the policies come with limitations on how many miles the vehicles can be driven a year. They're primarily vehicles that are being used in parades and things of that nature, collector shows and things of that sort. So you've got a built-in mechanism for limited mileage on the collector side. And then I've got real concerns on the other side of the spectrum for folks that are struggling to get to and from work in their automobile. And so I support the legislation. I'll make a motion to that effect. I think these are some of the challenges we have in the state of California, is how much is enough. And when we look at the regulatory environment in the state of California, in my view, it's much too onerous, and we ought to be looking for opportunities to provide some relief. And I would think that this would be a logical one. So, thank you.
Senator Weiland.
I echo some of the same comments. In terms of car collectors, it's pretty obvious, and to any of us when you drive around, that these folks don't drive very much. I mean, I just don't see that as an issue for them. I think the issue is for other people who own those cars, who clearly would be people who can't afford something else. And it was interesting, and I think it makes sense in the rural areas that you only do those smog checks with a transfer of ownership. But the people live in the urban areas. And as much as I wish we had mass transit that could enable people to get back and forth, and I've lived in Europe and New York City where that happens, it's not the case here. It's interesting to me that there's money available. My guess is that a lot of those folks don't know about that. Because you see some of these cars on the road, and you know that if they could get something better, they probably would. So I'm inclined to support it because, you know, the car collectors I don't think is an issue. And for those people who need it for their job, I'd like to see a more perfect world where we didn't have that problem. But right now, I just think it's worth helping them.
To that point, Senator Weiland, counter to that, there are many rural counties that do have the smog check. It's very few that have the transfer only there, that are the highest air attainment standards. So you'll see them all up and down the valley here, same type of rural situation, lower income areas that still do have the program. And so they're required to do it every 2 years. And what's good about this era of vehicles is 76 was when they started applying catalytic converters to these automobiles. So their cleanliness level is higher than previous years as well. So it's a constant improvement of the standards. So this is another unique set of vehicles that has a better attainment than some others. And lastly, these are vehicles that regular people can work on. They can go down to the auto parts store and still have a chance of being able to understand how to do a repair themselves under their shade tree, because it isn't so full of sophisticated computer, technology and electronic fuel injection like that a person can actually understand how to fix one of these vehicles with parts and decent tools and a little bit of skill. And so you take that away from them, they're completely having to rely on a high-tech situation where you plug in the computer and you don't even get to talk to them for less than $1,500. And so across the board, there's a lot of things that are going to help people. And then the CAP, the Consumer Assistance Program, they're not receiving applications until July 1 of this year. So what is everybody supposed to do from the beginning of the fiscal year till July 1 that would know about this program and would need the help for that? And as our state budget continues to do as it is the state going to keep the commitment to this and other similar things that would help with that?
Yeah, and I think you made the point earlier about ranch vehicles, and anyone who's spent time in those areas know there's lots and lots and lots of ranch vehicles that are older for all sorts of reasons, as well as the people who work there. But it's also, I think, true in the urban areas. The other problem is, and I think I certainly experienced this, what infuriates me is not if I happen to see a collector and you're behind and you can tell there's more exhaust, but those vehicles that somehow are escaping this whole thing that are really bad. I don't know what you do to get rid of those, and sometimes I suspect there's some fraud there, but I think you've made the case well.
Anyone else have a